Live streaming is on.
What, do you want to start then, Ben? Is that what?
Yeah, I can start us off. So welcome to combined Linux user group meeting for Upstate Carolina Linux user group and Columbia Linux user group. This week marks the 25th year of the Columbia Linux user group that started on August 5th, 1997. And
you have a good memory, Ben.
Well, I was reminded last night by a good email thread that came up yesterday. And I will, let's see, it was Stephen Nance was one of the original members, and he piped up and said, "Hey, this is the 25th anniversary," and I was like, "Oh, all right." But yeah, and then so he was the original prime mover of the group, and he still is, after 25 years, still doing the DNS registration for the ColaLUG.org.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Did he give you other history of it, like why they decided to do it and everything like that?
It didn't say that, but I mean, it was. Who else was talking about Linux when it was 5 years old? You know, I heard about it in 1995 when I was in Iowa on a consulting contract for Pro Systems, and somebody mentioned that there was this free Unix operating system that you could download and install to your computer. So I thought that was neat, but I didn't really try to do anything like that until 1998, and I still hadn't even heard of Columbia LUG. Do you know when the UCLUG started, Jace?
The history that I know of it, so I started going like at the end of 1998. September to November, I think, was my personal first time. And I think that they had started as a special interest group of the Upstate Carolina PC users group. It was supposed to be a Linux special interest group. And apparently the PC users group were they were a little snobby and didn't give Rick Smith much time or to devote to this special interest group. So he just formed his own and stole basically the entire same name and changed the PC to Linux, and they are no more. So we live on through them, or they live on through us, I suppose. But I'm like you, Ben. I was. It was about 96 for me. I was working for an internet provider, and the only thing that I didn't have anything 386 or better. It was the only thing I had was a 286, and I kept trying to get it to work. It didn't work. It's just 32-bit processor was needed. So I got into FreeDOS and other 16-bit free operating systems and stuff like that. But when I moved here in '98, then like I say, that fall was when I personally first started. When did you?
Linux?
Yeah.
Probably about the same time, mid-late 90s. I was working for an engineering company.
Yeah.
And we had put in a coaxial network.
Yeah.
We were looking for something for a server, and that's where SME server. You ever heard of that one?
Yeah.
If you go, it's still alive, contribs.org. It's a really neat little kind of a small business, little all-in-one. It has a templating system for the config files.
Oh,
that's what I liked about it.
Oh.
I learned a lot of how to manipulate config files using templates initially, early on. But that was my first.
But my question was really, when was first? Were you here?
Here, the Linux user group. Oh, okay.
Early.
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Probably that's maybe 2000. I don't know. I can't remember what I had for lunch.
So then you joined in about 98, you said?
No, I first heard about Linux in '95. I didn't start to buy magazines about it until like 98 or 99. I think there was my favorite bookstore in town that came out with Maximum Linux in 98 or 99, and I bought that up in a hurry.
Yeah,
And I
makes
kept
sense.
looking. Yeah, I kept looking for the new issue, and the next issue didn't come out for like 7 months, and I was like, "What is this? Is it a flash in the pan or something?" But anyway, that initial issue had a CD in it, and I tried to get that running on my 16 megabyte laptop, and I think I told the story before, but I beefed up the memory to like 144 megs and tried to get Linux to load, and the memory ran so hot that the computer would just shut off. And I thought I didn't realize it was a hardware problem. I was like, oh, Linux sucks, and so I dropped it.
I think it was about 99 or 2000 that I had come down to ColaLUG once or twice, down to Columbia. It was held at USC.
Correct.
One of the engineering buildings.
Yep. Shay Walters told the story about how he had a friend on the faculty, and they allowed him to use the faculty lounge at USC in the engineering building, and I didn't start attending meetings until like 2007. 10 years later. So Shay and company, and another guy named Victor Gascon, and I'm probably butchering his name. It's probably,
I recognize the name.
Yeah. So Victor kept the group running all the way until Shay picked it up in around 2006 or 7, and then that's when I started joining, and then so the Shay and Ben team have been going since then for the last 15 years.
I remember Rick. Have you seen him? When did he stop?
Rick kind of dropped out of everything that I know about 3 years ago when he retired. He was working at Clemson, and he retired, and he decided he was going to spend time with his sheep and goats and pigs and cows and whatever other farm animals he had. He had so many animals. He would come to work and complain about all these animals. But yeah, so I hadn't seen Rick since then. I used to work with him at Clemson.
I started with ColaLUG only after pretty much leaving South Carolina. Excuse me, not ColaLUG, with UCLUG. Ben and I tried to start a League of Mad Scientists chapter in Columbia, and after he killed it by vacating, following a job out of state, the usual way. That's now 3 mad scientist groups I've been with have ended that way. Everybody gets jobs out of state. And so during COVID, I wanted to keep in touch with him. So ColaLUG and UCLUG was the way to do it.
Yeah, the lug was really the only way to share information and be able to meet and greet people.
But I also started with Linux back 94, 96, somewhere in there. Had been going for 4 years through Unix and internet withdrawal. And so in Michigan,
Come on.
was choosing between Next and Linux, and one of my coworkers used Linux, so started with Slackware. At the time, Emacs came on 6 disks and Slackware came on 5.
That sounds about right.
So the organization archive.org actually has a copy of our original webpage. That I posted it in the chat. Archive.org has an incredible amount of storage, and they are. It's almost like a 3-letter agency gave them a bunch of money and said, "I need you to index the whole internet so it doesn't forget anything." And it sure didn't. So,
My understanding is it's a project of the Library of Congress
Right.
that they've been collecting taxes for about 25 years, and about 10 years ago started using.
yep. Oh boy, I got to show this. Oops, wait, hold on.
Was anyone able to see my screen share of the website?
No.
Yeah.
I kind of I probably stomped on you, Jace, but this is
That's
what it looked like.
Yeah.
I still don't see it. It's black.
Likewise, I just see video for Ben's screen has been turned off to save bandwidth.
Right.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep.
I was seeing whenever I was sharing earlier, but I can see yours now.
Yeah,
But
I'll
not on
turn
the
my
big screen.
camera off.
I can't hear it on here.
We must not have any bandwidth here, guys, if it's the case.
It's
Probably-
probably my bandwidth. I might have to
Yeah.
kill some stuff.
So Ben, read off the topics there for ColaLUG, the first whatever date that is.
Oh yeah. Okay, so it reads ColaLUG. What is it? ColaLUG is the first Linux users group serving the Columbia area. ColaLUG's purpose is to provide users of the operating system Linux with the ability to communicate with others that share their interests. It is also good for helping new users set up Linux or help people decide whether Linux is a good choice for them.
And I see you got topics of firewalls, Major Domo, and Major Cool, proc mail, IP chains.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember IP chains.
Yeah, that was the original. That existed before IP tables.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember we had a presentation here on IP chains, and that's where I learned it. Yeah. Would have been great if we had Jitsi then, so we could share the different.
I still got a black screen for Ben's screen.
Yeah, over dial-up, that would have been great.
All right, sorry.
Well,
Let
that's true.
me stop sharing.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
can't see it
posted
at
the
all.
link in the chat, so if you want to see it, it's just click there. Anyway, let's see. There was some other in the thread that came up. Oh yeah, Shay. Yeah, Shay commented that he was a rebel and he went with Linux rather than Windows because he's a rebel, and then he went for Ubuntu rather than Red Hat, which most people he knew at the time was using. So that was a pretty good call. And he had his cousin Phil would come in and give presentations to the lug every now and then. One I remember really well was he set up a camera on a birdhouse that he had built and just recorded, using open source software, every single bird that visited his birdhouse, and he had it some way rigged so that whenever there was activity, the camera would turn on and catch the bird and then shut off after it left.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, that was probably 10, 12 years ago now.
So he didn't have a Raspberry Pi. What did he use to control it?
Well,
I
at
think
the time, he could have simply used parallel outputs from the computer. Before USB, most laptops and desktops had parallel ports, and was about 16, if I remember it was. Digital outputs that actually had greater driver capability than what you'd get from a Pi or Arduino.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that. You're probably right. Yeah.
Are we just jumping in here for let people know what our experience is with the group or what?
Well, there wasn't a topic, so it just
Yeah.
sort of I'd asked if I'm looking for a Android expert,
Not
or
me.
somebody.
Well, it kind of
Dan,
there is a
why don't
little bit of a topic there, Dan, because I ran into a Linux post on Twitter about runtime verification, and I'm gonna try to share my screen here again. See if it works this time. Let me just try to share a window instead of the whole screen.
Dan, were you going to talk about the lug?
Yeah, I was going to talk about my experience with this group here and my experience with Linux in general, but I didn't know if we needed to jump in or if it's going to go around the room.
No, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I've been experienced with this group probably less than a year. I joined, thinking it was last year sometime, latter part of the year. But I belonged to the Western North Carolina Linux users group for many, many years, both physically and online. So I got involved with this group. I did a couple of presentations here too, by the way, in the past. But I got involved with Linux probably early on in 1994 timeframe. My very first distro of Linux was Slackware in 94, I think, 94, 95. And moved on from Slackware to eventually Red Hat before it became Red Hat Corporation, and ran a web server. Actually hosted one of my websites using Red Hat 9, I believe it was, on a server. And so that's pretty much my experience with this group, and my experience with Linux. I've used every distro of Linux pretty much you can think of. I'm currently using AV Linux MX Edition, which is based on Debian and Antix.
So Dan, I remember going up to WNC-LUG like in the early 2000s. When was your first time up there?
With the WNC LUC online, LUG rather, online was probably, I'd say, within the last 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, as far as Linux goes, though, one of the things I've recently done is I just completed a project called the Linux from Scratch project.
Ooh.
I don't know if anybody's ever seen that. It's from a guy, the project manager by the name of Gerard Beekmans. Yes, he's Ben saying yes. It took me a week and about 21 hours of dedicated compile and make time, compiling the kernel, compiling the GNU OS from scratch, all source code, no binaries whatsoever. Built my own cross compiler to do part of it, and I completed it 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
I've actually logged into it, logged in as root. I've actually pinged Google.com, and I've gotten my IP address. So it's a working system. Now I've got to move on to the next phase, which is Beyond Linux from Scratch, BLFS, which I will be installing a desktop, a window manager, and other things to bring the Linux distro that I have into the GUI world, and then I'll have my own built from source only, scratch Linux from scratch. Ben, it looks like you've had some experience with it. Have you built your own?
I've done it twice.
Okay.
The first time took me 2 months on and off at work with a with a 200 megahertz machine back in probably 2007, I think. And it was a lot of watching screens,
Yeah.
the compile screen go by.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've got an i3 dual core, a quad core rather, i3, pretty fast processors, and I had one SBU, which is called a standard build unit of time, was about 1 minute 45 seconds. And I'll tell you what, the kernel was the roughest part, because after I got the kernel installed and configured, then you had to compile it, all right, and install it. The compile time alone was 130 SBUs, which was about 2.5 hours. And at the end of it, watching a screen go by for almost 3 hours, I got a notification that said, "Kernel built okay." I was like, okay. Anyway, working system. So it was an achievement. I've built 2 other distros of Linux from scratch, which is one is Gentoo and Arch Linux as well from scratch. And when I finished the Arch Linux from scratch build, I thought I'd given birth to an Arch baby. So this time when I finished the Linux from scratch build project, I thought I'd given birth to a penguin. So yeah. So anyway, I got my own build of Linux now, and it is original GNU OS. It's not anything to do with any distro of Linux whatsoever, even the early ones.
Yeah, well, when I started with Linux mid-90s, Slackware and the others pretty much were build your own Linux. You had to build all the drivers and have go through what I originally, the very first time, I spent, like Ben, probably 2 weeks on and off, making sure I had the answers to every one of the configuration questions,
Yep.
the Lin configure, whatever they called it. And then I had planned on Friday evening to start it off. Had plans to monitor it continuously over the weekend, and was shocked, pleasantly so, when I started it off, and only about an hour later, it had completed. I built VAX Unix before, and was used to always having a question wrong somewhere in it, and basically have to go back 3 days and start over again.
Right.
Until you get all the questions right, and then you make very sure the tape of that questions of those answers is well protected, backed up, etc.
Oh yeah.
So, and it really did take about 3 days to build a VAX installation.
Hmm.
So Ben, you got, you able to find your presentation?
Oh yeah, yeah. I can. If nobody else has a Linux war story, I can show you the little bit I found
Turn
about.
my video off here.
Runtime
Well,
verification.
since we're here, I have a question before this group might or might not be able to answer. Have been trying to start a League of Mad Scientists here in Winston without much success. However, there's been some interest expressed since the end of COVID in restarting the Piedmont Linux Users Group, which was operating here from the 90s until about 2015 and basically died. But I'm having very, very little success getting it started now. Any suggestions? One of the key things is we've got library venues available, but don't have a way right now of getting into one of the schools or universities, which is where Piedmont was operating out of Wake Forest most of its time. And that's where also most of its members came from. Any suggestions how to get the word out there for enough people at a time to get it started?
Social media, Robert.
Okay.
You gotta get good at social media and figure out where the students at Piedmont are going to. It's probably Facebook and TikTok.
And
Probably
Microsoft.
TikTok.
Yeah, and Microsoft. Unfortunately, that's proven how on the social media do you protect a group from being seen by the wrong parties and trounced upon?
Well, that's the catch, isn't it? I mean, social media is pretty public by default, and you need it to be because you don't know who you're going to run into. So you gotta start it out public, and maybe invite people that you like, to your group, with what are called direct messages or DMs,
Mhm.
and so that's the way I would do it.
All right.
And also maybe go to like local conferences, Southeast Linux Fest and Open Source 101 and what's the one in Raleigh?
All things open.
All Things Open. Go to those sorts of things and see if you can get a booth.
Okay.
Or just have a sandwich sign around you and say, Piedmont Lug.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I think Raleigh is the only one within the state right now.
Try Lug, yeah.
And for me, that's very hard to get to. Okay.
Definitely for me because I'm in Asheville.
Yeah, and then I think the next nearest one is it POS? What's the one? There's one in Greenville. There isn't there each year? Was it POSS something or other?
I believe POSCon has become Open Source 101. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, pretty much. They're meeting next week and discussing observability.
Okay, where are they meeting? I
When
won't get
uh,
where.
they're meet. I think they're meeting online, but let me check the. Let me check my inbox here. Yeah, there we go. Open Source South Carolina is meeting August 16th. So that is, I guess that's next Tuesday.
And right around the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Given, I just realized um, the the expressed interest and attempt to start up Piedmont Lug again was also just coincident with about the time I was starting to have the trouble and the phone wiped. I wonder if that's another. No, who knows? All right, thanks.
All right. Oh man, I posted a huge link to Open Source South Carolina. It's got all kinds
Got
of
it.
tracking data in it.
All right, got it. Thank you.
All right, no problem. So yeah, a couple days ago, I noticed this tweet on social media. Let's see if I can show my screen again. Window. Oh, I saw Edge there. There we go. All right. So maybe this one won't crash. Can you see that?
Black screen.
Still black screen.
Just for me.
It's working on my laptop, but not on our screen up here. So,
Okay. Well, I'll just have to read it. This is a tweet by Daniel Bristow de Oliveira, and he was announcing that Linux runtime verification interface has been merged into Linux 6.0, and possibly 5.20. So and he writes, RV is a lightweight yet rigorous method for that complements classical exhaustive verification techniques such as model checking and theorem proving with a more practical approach to complex systems. RV works by analyzing the trace of the system's actual execution, comparing it against a formal specification of the system behavior. RV can give practical information on the runtime behavior of the monitored system while enabling the reaction for unexpected events, avoiding, for example, the propagation of a failure on safety critical systems. And so that's the tweet. It was merged July 30th. So just like 9 or 10 days ago. And then I looked again and found that Phoronix, Michael Larabelle, the main guy behind that website, had already done an article on it. And let me try to share that one. All right, stop sharing that one, and yeah, here we go. All right, so everybody still got black screen?
I don't have any screen.
Man.
Nothing. I don't understand that.
Okay.
Well, I can see the Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch. Well, anyway, I just have to read it.
Try sharing it one more time.
All right, I'll try one more time. Stop sharing. All right. Window. Microsoft Edge tab.
Okay, I've got a screen now, but no, it's all black.
It works on.
All right. Is it showing up yet?
Oh, you're the moderator.
All right, I can see it as the moderator, so it's probably in the live stream, but it's not on our screen up here.
I couldn't see it.
Yeah, so.
No.
Well, that's just, well, actually, let me try one more time. I was trying to share.
It's not going to be good for future presentations.
Yeah, I had the share tab audio tab checked, so maybe that was getting in the way of things. So let me try it again. All right, can you see it now?
No.
No sharing at all now.
No sharing at all. Awesome. I wonder if it'll. Let me try. Try sharing a window. How about
Black.
I
still
can see
black?
it.
What's he trying to share? Is it something that somebody else can share?
I'm just trying to share my browser. This time I tried to share the window application.
Tab of this browser.
Just to change variable, why don't I see if I
Somebody
can
else
share?
share it. Yeah, sure. What for Phoronix?
Well, you'd have to stop sharing for you to do
You
that.
share it. You can speak
All
Robert.
to it.
right, I stopped sharing.
Okay.
All right, trying it now. I was seeing somebody's window. I'm selecting a window to share. And I think it says I'm sharing it.
Well, I see nothing. I see
All
no
right.
shared window whatsoever.
No shared window whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's a PDF to into that part too.
And I've got pretty good bandwidth here, 300 megs down.
Yeah, I've got it says I've got best quality.
So
Widest
now I see a
bandwidth.
black screen. That's all I see.
All right, and I see you are sharing your screen. Show me what I'm sharing. Let me try that. And okay, I can see my own window. Nobody else. Is there anybody else who can see it?
Nope.
It should say file system hierarchy. Okay, well, Ben, it's
black.
not just you.
No.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
So where's
well,
the Jitsi originating? Is that, I mean, whose bandwidth is that being controlled by? Is that from the group?
Well, it's just
It's a public Jitsi
yeah.
instance, yeah.
Yeah, this Jitsi is distributed, so but they all everybody's feed does feed into the server, so and the server is from 8x8, something called 8x8, so they've been providing service for free for years, so it's
Well, we don't have any,
something
Saturated,
we
I
pay
think the word
for.
you're looking for.
we don't have any
Saturated is the word
video
I'm looking
or
for.
anything like that going, so that's kind of a remarkable.
I don't know. Well, anyway, I just wanted to mention about runtime verification because that's what you would put on safety critical systems, and run real time systems that that you really can't fail, like airplanes, critical,
Mars lander.
yeah, Mars lander, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exciting that, Linux is getting that, and it's it's just more proof that Linux just keeps on innovating and keeps getting better and better. And I think it was probably 15 years ago that we were talking about 1,000 commits a day were being added to the kernel, and it's probably more than that now.
So Ben, is that VR built into the kernel? Is that what you're saying? It's going to be built in, okay.
Yeah, he calls it a runtime verification interface. So it's basically the plumbing to be able to have a runtime system, and in his PowerPoint presentation is on the web. I wish I could show that, but obviously that's going to come up with the same results.
I forgot I'm using Wi-Fi since I wasn't planning on presenting tonight. Is there anybody using a wired connection that can try sharing? I assume, Ben, you're using Wi-Fi since you're not at your normal location.
Yeah, I'm using Wi-Fi.
I'm using Wi-Fi too.
Anybody using wired?
Yeah, no, that's wireless.
That's Wi-Fi, yeah.
That's wireless too.
Yeah, I think everyone
I was
uses
just checking
Wi-Fi.
our bandwidth. I mean, we're just like 100 by 100 fiber, and I'm getting about 75 and about 75.
Yeah.
So we got plenty of bandwidth here.
It could just
Yeah, I'm
be a
seeing
matter
100
of
here.
the bandwidth of all of us going
110,
to
111.
Jitsi and then to Google, YouTube, and then back to here.
Oh, I wonder if he stopped the live stream, if it would.
I have a feeling if we stop the live stream, it might
Work. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And my guess is that the live stream actually has the
Yeah.
so.
Well, I turned off my camera. Maybe that would make a difference.
I have a question about live stream when we can get to a point where I can ask it.
We're gonna have chicken and egg problem if we do that.
Yeah. No, it's just a question I'm going to throw out, see if anybody had any ideas about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the Western North Carolina Linux users group, I run the live stream for that, and it runs for an hour and stops, and there should not be a time limit on it.
I've had that problem.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, every time we have a meeting, it stops at an hour.
Yeah, it shouldn't do that. It should be open-ended.
Well, you get what you pay for.
Well, I mean, I've researched it, and it says it's I don't think anybody's paying for them. Well, yeah, if you had a paid account, I guess. But there are people who live stream for 3, 4, 5 hours.
On
I'm sure they
Jitsi?
don't have paid accounts.
On Jitsi?
Yeah, no, not on Jitsi. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe Jitsi is what's
Jitsi
causing
setting
the
on
hour
public
limitation.
instance.
Actually, I think it's YouTube.
Well, then how can people for live stream for 4, 5, 6 hours and not have a problem?
Because YouTube splits.
Monetization.
They split their videos into live streaming and something else that I don't understand real well.
It's live streaming spelled differently, right?
Yeah, I still haven't figured out the Google Studio interface, but yeah, there. I mean, if you go to your videos on YouTube and try to manage them, then they oops, look at that. I tried to do that and don't want to do that. But yeah, they separate live streaming videos from other kinds of videos that are still recorded, and I think the live streaming ones are by default.
Never any issues, but those are all paid.
Stopped to it.
Well, I researched it myself through YouTube Studio, and it did not say anything at all. I couldn't find anything about a 1 hour limitation.
It what?
I'm watching the live stream on YouTube. Somebody do a screen share.
Every time I've tried to do a live stream, Dan, it stopped at an hour.
Okay.
Whereas if I copied the key and pasted it into Jitsi, I was able to go longer.
Well, that's what I do. I copy the key into Jitsi.
Is that the one doing the live stream?
Well, then I don't know.
I grab the key from YouTube and paste it into the Jitsi interface.
Yeah.
Start it up, and it goes an hour, and then shuts down.
Then yeah, I don't know.
You should be seeing this.
Connect sharing. It's not like
For
for
5
live.
seconds.
Is that what that's saying?
It's just a mystery.
What are you
Yeah,
sharing?
wrapped up in an enigma.
Yeah.
It's just a page. This, if I were streaming, this is what I would use.
So anyway, maybe we'll see planes with running versions of Linux.
Well, my understanding is Freedom, the International Space Station, most of its experiments and stuff run on Linux. There's a OpenSUSE, what is it? Secure SE, secure something. It qualifies for FIPS. I used to know these numbers. 159, the confidential level government security. And I understand that's been being used on the space station now for at least 10 years.
Yeah. SE is security enhancement.
Thank you. Yeah, good. And what's the FIPS number again? Is it 189 or what's the number?
I don't know that.
The FIPS number is 142.
142. Okay, thank you. That doesn't sound familiar, but I guess it's right.
It's not doing anybody.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Linux is running on Mars right now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it is. Both the Perseverance and Curiosity.
The Mars lander, the craft when it was coming in, landed using Linux from 4,000 miles out above the surface. Totally autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because humans can't get involved at that point.
Yeah. Last I checked, most of Boeing's aircraft and most robots are still using, because it's been tested in court, so I suspect it's going to be continue to use, is a simple frame OS that they can run any feature code in. In other words, there's a hardware timer that basically closes every task at a fixed interval. And then when it starts again, it starts critical tasks. And so long as, and they're categorized such that the required tasks have to run within are time limited. So they have to run within the pre-assigned time, and there's usually a mathematical proof that doing so will at least keep the plane in the air. And then anything else runs if there's extra time left over in the frame.
Of course,
It may not be
Facebook
the,
runs on Linux, you know.
yeah, and that may not be the best, but about 30, 40 years ago, it got proven in the courts.
Yep.
Yeah. Anybody know any different these days?
No. I wonder if the Tesla car is going to be running by Linux on Linux.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Yep,
Yeah.
that would be too. I wouldn't be surprised if the project for the James Webb Telescope wasn't Linux based as well. Space telescope.
Yeah.
That was a
They're doing
remarkable project.
HPE has a compute-based cluster in the ISS
Oh, really?
where they're doing edge-based DNA sequencing, containerized edge-based DNA sequencing, and kind of funneling the data via like smart filters back to IBM Cloud.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah. So kind of like the ultimate edge, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Edge of space.
Yeah. Looking
You said
forward
it's
to
on
the.
ISS?
That's on the ISS. The HPE has like this similar to like, remember Moonshot? You know, all the arm-based blades. Similar to that.
Okay.
It's straight compute.
Hmm.
And I think they're using it for like DNA sequencing. And
Wow. Well, so why do it on the ISS and not do it at home? Is there a particular reason for out in space?
something about doing the sequencing and the weightlessness
Oh,
has an advantage.
interesting.
Well, I heard today Artemis is having an unmanned launch coming up late this month around the moon, and supposedly to be followed by the next, assuming everything goes right, by a manned mission a month later. Capstone, I understand, I haven't checked recently, but I believe by now it should be in its orbit around the moon, for those who are keeping
Right.
track.
You know what Artemis is really designed for, right, Robert?
No, my understanding was it was supposed to be its official designation was it's supposed to be a long-range capsule to return to the moon. I take it that's not correct?
No, that's correct. But what they're doing is Artemis is designed to explore the polar orbit of the moon, which we've never done.
Ah, okay.
And the reason that a polar orbit is critical is because
Water.
with a polar orbit, with satellites orbiting in a polar fashion instead of equatorially, you never lose contact with the Earth. And so these are going to be precursor missions that are planning to put a satellite in permanent polar orbit about the moon, followed shortly by a space station construction that is going to be permanently orbiting the moon, followed by a base on the moon.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Why would a polar orbit always be in view from Earth? And Capstone, I believe, is in a halo orbit around the moon, specifically a near rectilinear.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, I'm only telling you what I've heard from NASA when the NASA director talked about a polar orbit being critical because it always gives them communication contact with the Earth, whereas an equatorial orbit does not.
Right.
Well, an
So-
equatorial orbit would not, obviously. The Apollos
Right.
went behind the moon. Polar orbit would still seem to go behind the moon. The capstone, though, the idea is the capstone's not actually orbiting the moon. It's orbiting a Lagrange point,
Right.
and as a consequence, its orbit is bigger than would be easily is such that it's always above the horizon of the moon as seen from the Earth, so it's continuous, and it's near rectilinear, which means essentially it's long and narrow at a point that is, I believe, south of the moon, which allows it to make it basically is a recycler. It's the first recycler. If you remember I think it was called the Hermes in the Martian. They had
Right.
the vehicle that was going back and forth between Earth and Mars for all missions. And the capstone was a little microsatellite put in that orbit. And I understood the Gateway space
Right.
station was to
Yep.
be done in the same way. By going down close to the moon periodically, you can save a huge amount of fuel in your landing vehicle. At
Correct.
its low end, it's already near a re-entry or capture.
Yeah. I
and
think the
likewise,
apogee is like 400. Is it like 400 miles? It may even be less than that.
the paracel, you mean, right, would
No,
be something like about 400 kilometers, quite low.
apogee's closest. I mean, perigee. You're right. Perigee's closest point. I think
Yeah,
it's under 400 miles, if I'm not mistaken.
that sounds right.
Yep.
And let's see, the Lagrange point, the L2 Lagrange, no, that's the solar Lagrange point. Yeah, I forget but it's not entirely stable since the Earth, or the moon rather, you have to remember, the moon actually isn't a satellite of the Earth, it's a satellite of the sun. We're officially a binary planet from the 70s, when the IAU defined a satellite, up until around 2000, when they also defined the first dwarf planet, when they decided to give up trying to get people to change the textbooks to call us a binary planet, and instead came up with the weird circumlocution so that they could call Luna our moon again.
Right.
And added that's what we're up to, about 19 now other moons that met their circumlocution.
Yep. Sounds right.
So,
Well, I'm glad to hear that Artemis is going to be near the end of this month, because I'm looking forward to it.
ditto. Yeah. And don't forget, Dart's coming up at the end of the year. Around, I think it's now scheduled for early September, so in about a month
Okay.
from now, to be the first time we're going to deflect an asteroid.
Right.
By the way, they presumably for public relations, the asteroid they're deflecting is already 7 million kilometers away, and they're actually going to be pushing it about another 4,000 kilometers away, further away.
Yeah. It's not on a collision course with Earth, though.
Now,
Thank
in the
God.
90s, I was trying to get people interested in funding a private mission to capture Apophis when it came by in 2012, I think it was. Yeah, it was 2012, April. Unfortunately, couldn't get people interested in the idea of capturing an asteroid.
Yeah, just over there, don't break it up and make it worse.
Well, they shouldn't. What they're hitting Didymus with is just well, basically a microwave oven.
All right.
But they're using the fact that it's a binary asteroid to give them a lever, so they'll only be moving the what they hit, the orbiter, that they hit, they'll be moving it enough to measure its change in orbital period, but that'll give them a very good measure of how much momentum they've added to the system, and that in turn will tell them whether they got 4,000 miles deflection, 8,000, or none at all, or worse, in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
With what I was proposing in the 90s, the goal was only to move it about 50 meters, a few microns per second, but we were going to steer it into a lunar capture orbit.
It's all right.
So,
Ben, you just shared something on the chat. What did you share with us?
Okay, yeah, that link is the runtime verification slides from Mr. De Oliveira, and that goes way in detail for how it works. But an upshot of that slide presentation is that you get runtime verification almost for free because Linux has such good tracing tools built into the kernel that all he had to do was hook up the whatever he built, his formal verification system to the tracing points in Linux, and it just works.
Yeah, I just downloaded what you shared. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to have to take off, unfortunately. I can't stay beyond an hour. Enjoyed the meeting, so I guess I'll catch you guys next time.
Okay, good seeing you, Dan.
All right, thank you.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
Dan.
Take care. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Mm.
It's still not sharing my screen. That's weird.
Live stream should stop in a couple minutes. Let's try it after that.
Okay. Well, if we have nothing else, then maybe we could just disconnect the live stream.
Okay, yeah. Let me disconnect the stream
There first before you do it.
before I do what?
yeah, I'm set up to share as soon as you disconnect to try.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do it.